Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, the UN has accused Eritrea of widespread human rights violations that are forcing thousands out of the country each month. But with the government denying these claims, what's the truth? Well, it's not unusual for us to tap into a lively conversation online. Today, we are tapping into a fierce debate that's been going online for a long time.
And that might even be an understatement.
I think it might be. What do you have for us,
Well,
Malika?
there's such strong criticism and support for the Eritrean government.
Sure.
But what's interesting is that majority of it is from the diaspora. So have a look at these two tweets. This is from Ephraim, who says, the biggest problem is not having a rule of law. It's been postponed forever since 1997. My brother lives in fear every day in Eritrea. On the other hand, you have Desali, who says, we don't have a human rights crisis. This crisis is found only in the head of Eritrean enemies. So we want to know what you think at home. You can join this conversation with hashtag AJStream.
My name is Jenny Restemeyer. I'm the producer of Just Eat It, a food waste story, and I'm in the street.
Extrajudicial killings, torture, including sexual torture, open-ended national military service, and forced labour. These are some of the findings of a recent UN report accusing Eritrea of systematic, widespread and gross human rights violations. Based on hundreds of testimonies, the 483-page report says it is not the law that rules Eritreans, but fear. Eritrea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs responded in a statement describing the findings as unfounded and devoid of all merit, and calling the report a politically motivated campaign to undermine the political, economic and social progress the country is making. Now, this comes as the international community deals with a growing number of migrants taking desperate journeys to escape conditions at home, many of them Eritreans. The UN estimates that 5,000 Eritreans leave the country every month. So, beyond these accusations of the UN and the government's dismissal, what are the realities of life in Eritrea? To help us talk about this, we have Shayla Kitaruf, a commissioner on the Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in Eritrea, Filman Zarai, a pro-government advocate and blogger, Saleh Johar, an Eritrean writer and activist living abroad, and Rahil Oweldeb, a former head of foreign affairs for the National Union of Eritrean Youth and Students. Good to have you here, everybody. This conversation about human rights abuses has been going on about Eritrea for some time. Filman, as a patriotic Eritrean, and you're hearing these attacks on Eritrea all the time, can you make sense of why is it happening?
Sure. Again, let me just restate that Eritrea is doing something that's never done before in Africa. A truly independent nation that doesn't bow down, does not want its internal affairs managed by the U.S. or anybody else. It has an independent economic model that's self-reliant. No, it doesn't bow down to IMF, World Bank. It's simply a country that's independent, not on paper, but actually independent.
So independence is creating criticism? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, definitely. The main critic of our independence is Washington, the State Department. The UN report is pretty much hijacked by Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the State Department. They hijacked this report. Sheila's right here is a former employee of Amnesty International. She has a conflict of interest in this report, and there is certain bias in the report. She's not somebody that's neutral to the politics. She definitely has made the situation into a one-sided report. It's pretty much intellectually dishonest. The report is filled with innuendos.
Take a breath, Filman, because you threw out several things there. Shayla, this UN inquiry has taken a little while to get together, and you make some very bold criticisms of Eritrea. But Filman here is saying that, well, we're being victimized of Eritreans. We're just an independent African nation. Where do you disagree with Filman? Shayla, go ahead.
I would Yes, I would really say that I think some of the words which have been used, like attacks, is totally wrong, in the sense that what the Commission of Inquiry is concerned about is the respect for human rights and the rule of law, which in our findings we have had difficulty in seeing. First of all, we say that there is a rule by fear instead of rule of law, and you'll excuse me, this has gone. But, we are talking about human rights issues in Eritrea. This is not a conversation, as you rightly put it, about me as an individual. And I would really have liked Philemon to do a little bit of more research and homework. He would have seen that my past, I have a strong base on the African continent as a human rights lawyer.
So Shayla and Philemon, we've just at the very beginning of our conversation, Philemon and Shayla, and Philemon, you are taking us in a very at a tangent right here, because we're actually talking about Eritrea. We're not talking about Shayla's resume. Malika.
Well, here are two views online that kind of mirror what we just saw. This is Musi, who says it is absolutely politically motivated, the fact that Eritrea has attempted what no other African nation has attempted. We're self-reliant, he writes. On the other side, though, this is from Salam, and she picks up on the UN's report saying, my colleagues in Asmara, in Eritrea, are surprised that anything in the UN's report should be news to anyone at all. Saleh, is that a view that you share?
Yeah, Philemon, I like this guy, by the way. I have to compliment him with his behavior. His attitude is different than the PFDJ supporter crowd. But having said that, I'm afraid he's just reading a script that we hear all from the top, from the president to the foot soldier. It's just a script. The PFDJ system, or the ruling party in Eritrea.
So, Saleh, I'm just going to tell everybody who's not familiar with Eritrea, the PFDJ is the People's Front for Democracy and Justice, aligned with the ruling party. Right, okay, go ahead.
It's not the ruling party, so it's a movement. It's not a ruling party, it's a movement.
But they're aligned, I said they're aligned with the ruling party. Go ahead.
Okay, it's a ruling party. Anyway, the thing is, when they join international conventions and they agree or sign into conventions and all that, they just think it is a club. You just go in and there is no accountability. But once they sign those conventions, there is a process that has to be followed.
So, Saleh, according to you, what is the script? What is the script that you're saying the ruling party follows here when Eritrea is criticised?
By extension, he called me an enemy, right? Enemies of Eritrea. I am very thankful of what Ms. Ketharus is doing and what everybody who is concerned about the situation in Eritrea is doing. I am Eritrean. I love my country. I've been fighting for my country probably before Philemon was born. But that is where we have come now, that people are calling each other enemies of Eritrea and all that because they just happen to disagree with the government. And I have been in the news business for a long time, and what the commission, the COI has come out with is nothing surprised me in that, because I've been writing about this, hearing about this, I've written books about these issues, so nothing surprised me. It's only that given the resources they have, the access that they have compiled it in a readable, in a more condensed way.
Let me ask about that. Let me ask about that UN inquiry, Shayla. How was it? How did you do your research? How did you get the information? Because that has resulted in a lot of critique from Eritreans who are upset about what the report says. For instance, did you go to Eritrea yourself?
It would have been the best way, I concede, but we didn't get any invitation and no cooperation by any invitation extended to the Commission of Inquiry to conduct its research in Eritrea. So what we did was to approach as many countries as possible where we laid down a certain number of criteria, that is the number of Eritreans in those countries, to cover the period we were investigating. And we indeed got information from 1991 to as recently as February 2015 from people who had left.
You overstretch your mandate. Why are you looking in the past? The past has nothing to do. You overstretch your mandate.
Will you please allow me to finish my sentence, and then you can take over? Thank you. So I was saying that the method which was used was to carry out these investigations, and we collected about 550 testimonies,
so Sheila,
as well as invited submissions, 160 submissions.
Yeah, this is almost a 500-page report, so there's a lot of detail in there. But were you able to actually get any testimonies for people who lived inside Eritrea?
That was not something we did. What we did was, because there was no invitation from the government, what we did was to look at those who had left
so you're looking at
and
the diaspora.
Were able to speak.
Right.
Because there is something else I would like to say here,
Please.
that the Commission is very concerned about reprisals, and not only reprisals in the country,
I would like to comment on that.
but also outside.
It is totally slandered against. There's no reprisal culture inside Eritrea. You're talking about some other country. There's no reprisal.
If I may interrupt for a second, I'll just give you one example. For example, for people who have left the country, the family members have to pay 50,000 nakfa, which is over $3,000. We have documented several cases of this kind. So that's financial reprisals, but there are other kinds in terms of harassment, in terms of detention, etc.
Right,
so
yes,
reprisal is a very, very...
Guess, give me a pause for a moment. Rahil,
Yes.
I hear you trying to get in. We hear that. I also want to bring in the community. Malika, go ahead.
Well, Femi, one of the things you mentioned is voices from inside Eritrea. We actually got them here in the stream. So I want to play this video comment. This is Simon. Here's what he had to say.
I think life in Eritrea is filled with drive, filled with purpose. We're all on the move here in Eritrea, working towards a common goal that we've set for ourselves. There are many challenges here. We feel a lot of them are from unjust actions taken by those outside of Eritrea, and we still remain going, we still remain resilient, and we're on the move.
So you hear quite a supportive, optimistic view there. But on the other hand, we got tweets like this. This is from the diaspora. This is Luam, who says, in Eritrea, you're either a conscript or you're someone living in constant fear of being taken to prison or to indefinite military service. And Rahil, this is one of the things that the UN report picked up on. What do you say to that?
I think that, it really just depends on the individual. Maybe if they like to imagine ways of being detained or whatever, that they might feel that way. But I wanted to say something about the methodologies of the report, if I may. The report claims that 5,000 Eritreans flee Eritrea on a monthly basis, and yet only 550 people were interviewed during the compilation of that report. They also mentioned things about trying to pay extra attention to women, despite the extra efforts that they had undertook to do that. Only 18% of the people interviewed were women. Sheila likes to talk about human rights. I wish she would first acknowledge that Eritreans are humans, that she would have recognized and acknowledged the hundreds of emails, letters that came to her by the the Eritrean diaspora. They had approached her, even had said that they would go to her and at their own expenses to discuss the situation, and yet she ignored all of their inquiries.
Rahil, let me show you something here. This is Eritreans seeking asylum. It's on my laptop here. 357. 400 under UNHCR concern. That's the UN agency that's in charge of refugees. 5,000 leave the country each month. So that's a UNHCR figure. So you don't actually have to interview every single person that leaves Eritrea to get an estimate of how many people are leaving the country. I don't want to get but I don't want to get tied up in this point and this point and this point in the report. One of the things we wanted to do on the show is, what is happening in Eritrea? What's your reality for what's happening on the ground? Do share that with us, because that's important. That's what gets missed in this debate.
You know, things are challenging. Eritrea has been put under unjust sanctions. The Eritrean-Ethiopian border conflict is not finished. There's this no war, no peace situation. Ethiopia still occupies sovereign Eritrean territory. Yes, the youth are mobilized to build their nation. Unfortunately, because of this prolonged situation of no war, no peace with Ethiopia, many people have done national service more than the required 18 months, but there is already signs that this is being stopped, this is being reduced. I can talk from a very personal perspective. I have a cousin of mine who who did his service about 2 years ago. He is already finished with it, and he's no longer in the military or doing national service.
All right, take a pause. Shayla, when Nahir with passion says that,
if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, please.
Yeah.
Just would like to say that it would be great if the national service were in fact has been reduced. But this is not what we have been finding. The national service remains the first driver of people leaving because of the violations that they endure within the context of the national service. I have also a quick point to make. I have checked with the Commission of Inquiry's staff in terms of whether the Secretariat, whether we received any letters from the diaspora asking to speak to the Commission. No, there was no letters to the Commission of Inquiry.
I can forward them to you after the show. I can forward them to you after the show.
If I may, there were letters to the special rapporteur, and one needs to make the difference. That was a separate situation, and these are two different mechanisms. I have met
They responded to a post that you had included on your website. You had made a call that you said you extended the deadline.
Right, so guess, let me just move things on a little bit. Rahil, you're saying the diaspora was available to give letters to Shayla. Shayla is saying, no, I didn't get them. Let's move things on, because you two are not going to agree about this. So moving on.
Can you give me a minute?
Yes, Salah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, I think we are missing the point here. First of all, the mandate of the Commission of Inquiry is to investigate situations that is happening to Eritreans in Eritrea. Now, Sheila was nice. She said we were not invited. In fact, the right word is they were denied entry. But she was nice. She said we were not invited. Now, having been denied the opportunity to go inside Eritrea and see what is happening, just like the Red Cross and all other investigators do all over the world throughout history, the second best thing to do is meet the refugees, ex-victims, or people who have been victimized in Eritrea. That is how you investigate what is happening in Eritrea. You don't investigate what is happening in Eritrea. Can I give me a minute, please? You cannot investigate what is the situation in Eritrea by interviewing Firmon somewhere in Texas. But it doesn't reflect anything, because
but you're a better person to interview? Are you a refugee?
Have
you been kidnapped in the Sinai? Have you gone through the hardships that Eritrean refugees are going through? Please.
No.
Have you participated in the border conflict? What are you talking about? When was the last time you were in Eritrea?
Rahel, this is not a Wahio meeting, so let's behave. I have my iPhone. Thanks, I've been here for a long time. I have my Jordans, okay? So I'm not a fresh refugee. But I have been invested in this issue, and I have
both of you take a breath. Philman, take a breath.
Femi,
I want to bring in the community. You may not come back for a second, Shayla. Shayla, just hold on for a minute, because our community also would love to say a couple of things. It is a big conversation. Malika?
Rahul actually brought up a point about migrants and people who are leaving, so I want to pivot to that. This is from Salman, who says, the anecdotal evidence coming out of the country with the refugees, he calls them, paints an incredibly dire situation in the country. And this next person explains what that dire situation to them is. Anwar says there's a total absence of the rule of law, no freedom of expression, movement and association, and detention in harsh conditions. So, Philman, I'll go to you with those. Why do you think we see such high numbers of people fleeing?
First of all, we have to, let me just explain that Canada had a subcommittee hearing on pretty much the human rights inside Eritrea and said that there's no persecution, no oppressive happening. The British foreign, pretty much the Home Office, have a guideline that said that there's no persecution happening inside Eritrea. The Denmark government sent a fact-finding mission inside Eritrea.
So, Philman,
the reality.
Thank you for sharing these details. To Malika's point, or to our community's point, why are people leaving Eritrea?
Okay, again, Eritrea is a developing nation. There is constraints, a limitation of the economy. There is the ongoing border situation. There is a 300,000 soldier stationed outside of our country. We have a neighbor that wants to overthrow the government. We have a neighbor that is in our economy. We have a neighbor that is bullying us, and Washington gives it its cover. The Ethiopian regime.
So people are leaving because of the threat of Ethiopia. That's why they're leaving.
No, it's more multifaceted than that. There is an
They're
economy.
leaving. Sorry, they're leaving because of national service that has to have been prolonged because Ethiopia still occupies sovereign Eritrean territory. I wish the UN would at least go by the Algiers peace agreement.
I would say people are leaving because their rights are being violated, and I would list the violations. No country can come and say that using any kind of external situation to violate the rights of people inside the country. That is not acceptable in international law. It can't at all be acceptable. There are standards which are very important, which Eritrea has agreed to adhere to, and not adhering to those brings us to say that there is forced labor in the context of the national service.
I really do want to share with you just for a moment. We've got so much to pack into this. Philman, just give me a second. Just take a breath for a second. I want to show you something here because obviously you're very upset about the UN inquiry. I want to show you something here. This is from United Nations Development Programme, another agency of the UN. It says here, Eritrea Health MDGs report for 2014. These are standards of care and health that around the world the UN acknowledged would be a good way, a good standard for us to reach by the end of this year. So on healthcare, Eritrea is doing amazing in terms of building and developing within the country, in terms of education, in terms of self-sufficiency in the whole of Africa. How is that even possible? Eritrea is doing all of that. Saleh, when people say who are in Eritrea, that is not being acknowledged. What is your response to that?
The issue here is the human rights report. I think there are a lot of good things happening, but it shouldn't be countersigned for the ruling party. Everything, even if the air is good, if the temperature is good in Eritrea, it's said, okay, the government is doing well, the temperature is good. 300,000, he said, Philmon, across the border, they're ready to invade our country, Ethiopian soldiers, I presume. But the ruling party is training and has a force of 45,000 well-armed Ethiopian soldiers who are arresting Eritreans. So there is a lot of contradictions. I don't want to go to, don't interrupt me, don't interrupt me. When you get the chance, when you're called, then you can talk. The thing is, Eritrea is being built. Even if there was if this government was not there, people will build their lives. But there is no construction. There was no construction for the last 20 years. Okay? And they're building the Great Wall of China. I mean, everybody is out, isolation and all that, and they think that this is a good thing. The pyramids were built by slaves, right? And then probably we'll build something now so that we can just have tourists going there. No person should be forced to drop a sweat unwillingly. That is
People are
human
not
rights
being
value.
forced to drop a sweat. It is the right and duty of citizens to take part in their nation building process, and they do it with pride. Okay, all of these things. You want to talk about the regime? It's Eritrean youth that have sacrificed.
So you're listening to Rahel Weldeb. We also have
build their
Saleh
country.
Johar, Filman Zarai, and also Shayla Kiraruth. This conversation, we warned you there was heat in this conversation. We didn't fib. Malika, what are you seeing online?
Two sides. Milena says, daily life in Asmara, peaceful and serene. That's an image that doesn't sell sound bites, though. On the other hand, this is Adnan, who says life is terribly unpredictable and a wrong step could land me in hot water.
Eritreans debating with Eritreans. More of that at stream.aljazeera.com on the post show. See you there. Thanks for watching. Hello again. This is the Streams Online Post Show. We've been talking about a recent UN report accusing Eritrea of committing a number of human rights violations. One of the main ones is about this issue of national service. The idea of national service taking 18 months, but some people have been known to do national service for 10 years. And not knowing when it might end. That is a very contentious subject. Malika, what are you seeing?
Well, actually, Rahel mentioned it at the end of our show, and so a couple of people heard that, and they tweeted in their thoughts on what you said, Rahel. So this is Vanessa. She says, wow, Rahel admitted that people are leaving because of national service. And this next person, Salam, says, how does a demoralized army leaving the country in their droves safeguard the borders? And I think she's picking up on the fact that you said that, yes, there is a reason people are leaving, and it's because of the service, but it's because they have to defend themselves from Ethiopia, as you said. So what do you make of these people and their tweets?
Many times the things that I've said have been taken out of context, including within the report, which I'll get into just a moment. But yes, it's because of the no war, no peace situation, because Ethiopia still occupies sovereign Eritrean territory.
Do you want to explain this to our international audience? That phrase you just used, explain it to everybody who's not in the region.
Okay. Although there is not active war, as in people shooting at each other at the border, the threat of war is still there. The Algiers peace agreement was signed in the year 2000. The final and binding border decision came out in 2002, and still Ethiopia occupies Eritrean sovereign territory.
So there's still there's a land dispute still going on.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Also, we can see it on Ethiopian television how many times the government in Ethiopia has called for regime change, and that they would support anybody willing to make that happen through violence.
So Rahel, is this a worry that Eritrea has, or do you think it's a reality that Ethiopia is going to cross the border?
May I come in, please?
Shayla, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to respond to a couple of things which were said earlier with regards to the health MDGs, and I think that's really great. But there is another sound we get from what we have been hearing, is that many of those who need critical health care need to go elsewhere, for example, in Sudan. There is one aspect
Remember, Eritrea
of
is a
the
developing country.
The national service, which I would like to
sanctions.
raise at this point, is that the forced labor aspect of the national service. In fact, the analysis, the finding of the Commission of Inquiry is that the national service is equal to forced labor.
All right, Shayla, stop
There's
here for a
torture,
second.
which happens
Shayla,
in
stop
the
for a second, because
context,
it's a
and all this
conversation,
brings
not a
us
lecture.
to say
Shayla, just give me a moment.
all this is crime against humanity.
All right, Shayla, just give me a moment. It's not
There is a
to
possibility that
Shayla, give me a moment. There's
crimes
a 2 second
against humanity have
Shayla,
been
don't
committed.
talk over me. I need this to be a conversation. All right. Forced labor, Filman. That is the accusation. What is happening on the ground?
Okay, let's be honest here. Nepson is one of the mining company inside Eritrea. As a Canadian company, has an independent consultant to verify if there is actually forced labor, and it came with facts that said that there's no forced labor happening inside Eritrea.
What about
even
in
if there was?
Philman, what about in the civil service? The idea that people, you can go into military national service, you can go into the civil service, you can end up working in the field, be paid very little, and not know when your national service is going to end. That would seem like indentured labor to an outsider. How do you describe that?
This is not true. Just a few weeks ago, Minister of Justice from Norway actually visited and confirmed that there's no forced labor. The national service is 18 months. So
there's no forced labor as far as you're concerned.
There's no forced labor.
In Eritrea.
Who's going to profit from the forced labor? There is no private corporation that we own inside Eritrea. There's no rich elite in Eritrea to pretty much gain from this.
Philman, this is how I would understand it. Who would profit from forced labor? Anyone who doesn't have to actually pay the laborers. So
People do get paid. People do get paid. Unfortunately, because Eritrea is a developing country and because economic resources are minimal, people do not get paid very well.
Right.
Ministers do not get paid very well. You have a better chance of getting a higher salary if you work for a mining company than if you are a minister of Eritrea. So that is the reality.
So Rahil, do you understand why people are seeing this as forced labor?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
You don't see that?
No, okay, national service is an obligation to all citizens.
For 10, 15 years, perhaps?
Citizens.
Because that seems unreasonable from an outsider's perspective.
Well, of course it's unreasonable considering the fact that Eritrea is being held hostage by Ethiopia.
Saleh?
Being held hostage by the international community who does not want to force Ethiopia to abide by the Algiers peace agreement.
Saleh, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, Philmon mentioned that a consultant verified that there is no forced labor. He's just saying the same thing here, so it doesn't mean anything. Besides, the consultant was, 3 years ago, and it has been overruled. And the Norwegian diplomat who sat in Asmara, he reported that the cappuccino is very good. That is that much for the Norwegian reporter. But anyway, the thing is, there are forced labor. Thousands of people are leaving because they don't see any future, big future. They don't see a good future for themselves. They're not free, so they have to escape.
See, once again, this is very bizarre. Once again, we have Eritreans who say, no, this is not happening. Yes, this is happening. Actually, let me just play a little bit from your president here. This is President Isaias Afwerki. He would talk to Al Jazeera and Jane Dutton. This is back in 2010, a really long time ago, about all of these critiques of Eritrea. This is what he had to say to talk to Al Jazeera.
18, 20 years. This is a fantasy. This is a fantasy on those who think we are on a war footing. It's crazy. It's an imagination of people who can only be categorized as insane, who will fantasize on things that do not exist in real terms.
If your country is not on war footing, how come there's so much repression? There's no freedom of the press, there's no freedom of speech.
I can understand where you come from, and this is again another boring joke based on fabrications.
Can anybody leave the country when they want to?
All right, so that's the president of Eritrea saying all of these criticisms, all lies, all fabrications. What do you have, Malika?
Well, some of the questions you heard Jane Dutton ask the president, we're also hearing online. So this is via Facebook. This is Eritrea Demokratia, who says, why doesn't the government allow private media to exist so that it can be broadcast to the world freely to see Eritrean life? Why does it not allow the existence of different political parties? So, Philman, I'll go to you with those questions.
First of all, the way the media is shaped inside Eritrea is a lot different from what you see around the world. No multinational corporation owns it. There's no rich elite to influence the agenda of the media. So what Eritrea is doing inside is having a community-owned media. There is going to be more refined way of reporting from each region. So journalists are being trained. They've been trained, in Qatar, just different countries. So this is pretty much an exaggeration that there's no freedom of speech, or there's no journalism inside Eritrea.
Sheila, what did you find in terms of people being able to speak freely?
It's not only the media we are talking about. The media is not free, and that is very much the case. no independent voices in terms of written press as well as radio or TV. But generally also people in the country feel that they cannot express themselves. Whenever they do that, they have the risk of, because of the surveillance, of being arrested and put in jail indefinitely, and without the possibility of challenging their arrest. Also, it's always like looking, over your shoulder to ensure that whatever you're saying is not being heard. Because if you do mention, what we heard is that when people do talk critically about policies, and we're not at all being personal here. It's about policies. It's about expressing their views on issues which affect their lives. Then there is a risk that they cannot continue expressing themselves freely and are arrested.
All right, see,
can I just bring up something
really
from the report
about this, because I'm wrapping up now, Raheel, and Saleh and Philman and Shayla. What's really interesting, though, is that we've got Eritreans passionately saying, this is not the Eritrea that I know. Eritreans passionately saying, yes, it is. How do you make sense of that, Raheel? How do you get the Eritreans, often in the diaspora, so they're all outside of Eritrea, they're having this fierce debate? How does that make sense to you?
It makes perfect sense when one understands the discourse that's taking place. Everything that you Google Eritrea, you only see the extremes. And when you do see those extremes, especially those that are considered against the Eritrean government, they will fabricate anything to make a political point.
And they're saying exactly the same thing about you, Raheel. They're saying you're making it all up too. How do you?
I lived in Eritrea.
Yeah.
I lived in Eritrea. I served my country.
Right.
I had those experiences. I mean, if you want to think I'm making that up, whatever, you can go ahead and do that.
Yeah,
but
that's not me. That's half of the part of the diaspora community. So you're making sense of it, but in what way? Just keep it simple for us. How does this make sense?
The narrative is being driven to ostracize to Eritrea and her people, and therefore Eritreans in the diaspora that know their country, that visit it often, that used to live there, do express this patriotic feeling, because they know that what the international media is reporting is not the Eritrea they know. They know that is not their home.
Hold on a second, because I want to get this very briefly from everybody, apart from Shayla, because Shayla, I want to ask Eritreans why they're fighting. Saleh, for you, how does this make sense? The diaspora fighting the diaspora.
It's not, it doesn't make sense. First of all, before I go, I want to mention that the interview he says that he just showed, that the script I was talking about. You said that how does it make sense? Yeah. It doesn't make sense, because I see Eritrea where it is, humiliated, lost its dignity, and oppressed.
That's because of your doing.
Raheel, Saleh was very polite, and we're wrapping up the show, and I just want to hear it from him. But here we see it. Eritreans fighting Eritreans. Saleh, get to it. I don't have much time for that, sadly.
I can take that.
Yeah, go ahead, Saleh.
So I say this is not the Eritrea that I wish it for. Yeah. This is not the Eritrea that my friends and colleagues fought for. But for somebody who goes as a tourist with dollars, exchange them for a lot of Nafa basketfuls, spend their months and come, this is the Eritrea that I want, a cheap tourist destination. And these are the people who are making all this noise.
All right, so I'm going to say thank you to Raheel, Saleh, Philman and Shayla. As you can tell, there's so much more to talk about. You should go online. That conversation is not over yet. At the bottom of the screen, you'll find the hashtags that you can actually keep track of to follow this fierce debate. Malika.
Of course, and this is the last tweet I'll read from someone who actually picked up on what you just said. This is from Abel, who says, very heated debate on AJ Stream about Eritrea and human rights. It looks as if they're talking about two different countries.
Wow. All right. We started that way, we ended that way. Thank you very much to everybody for being part of this conversation. Really appreciate it. Moving on to our next AJ Stream conversation, we will be talking football. The FIFA Women's World Cup is underway, and in spite of it being the fastest growing sport in the world, the women's game just doesn't get the same attention as the men's. We'll take a look at some of the reasons why, and I'm off to watch Nigeria beat USA. Fingers crossed. See you tomorrow.